Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 322. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss 1997's Cinderella. This was a film produced for the wonderful world of Disney. This has been a busy couple of months for Cinderella as a overall franchise, right? 75th anniversary of the animated classic and 10-year anniversary of the live-action remake.
Honestly, we could have done an entire month dedicated to Cinderella between this and the two sequels, the two animated sequels. Right. But instead, we were doing, the February, and making me watch Sharpay for no reason whatsoever.
Listen, Disney didn't run it by me what their release slate was going to be. Why you'd be putting movies out in February anyway, I don't quite understand, unless you were hoping to get some holiday traffic from kids being out of school. Everybody loves What the February.
You are still not forgiven. This is going to take a very long time. But I am really excited to talk about this regardless because this one, I guess I didn't realize how many times I had actually watched it because on my first viewing, I remembered every single word to the music. And it's not because I listened to the Rodgers and Hammerstein soundtrack regularly. It was just because it all came back to me, which I found kind of odd because this wasn't on Disney Plus until 2021. So it's been, at least 4 years since I would have been able to watch it.
Right.
And it had to be about 10 or 15 prior to that because we didn't have this on VHS. It was A Wonderful World of Disney. And I don't think we taped it either. So I was like, where was I watching this exactly? But do you remember when this came out, how big it was?
It was a phenomenon. And I will tell you that I didn't watch it in its initial run. And quite frankly, until we sat to watch it for the purpose of this discussion, I'd never seen it in one sitting from start to finish. But what I remember most was how everybody was talking about the production, the cast. Mind you, and we're going to talk about Jason Alexander because he's in this film, but 1997, you're getting towards the tail end of Seinfeld. When they asked for $1 million an episode, people were mad at the talent and supported the show being canceled because they thought it was way too much money. It changed the landscape of television because Seinfeld is run. Basically, Seinfeld is run 24 hours a day somewhere. It is in syndication on so many different networks. This was the start, really, of the upward trend in salary for television, and it completely changed the TV landscape.
It wasn't until the cast of Friends did it that they really got the public to support the idea because they broke down the amount of work per episode and, the amount of hours that they're putting in and, being contractually obligated where they can't always take on other work. So it wasn't until then that there was a lot more behind the scenes exposed that the public sort of rallied behind a cast to do that. Because at the time, $1 million sounded absurd. But speaking of Jason Alexander, obviously we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the cast. That's like tip of the iceberg here. This was like the creme de la creme of 90s talent in this movie.
Oh, absolutely. So, does this feel like a 90s film? Has it held up? And is this considered timeless? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
So, we're just going to jump right into it. we're not going to bother doing the plot for this because, frankly, we've already done Cinderella twice between the live-action remake and the animated classic. And as we go through, we're going to talk about the soundtrack as well, because the songs basically act as plot devices.
They are truly baked right into the plot here. But this is pretty standard as far as a retelling of Cinderella. It doesn't really deviate from anything that the animation did. In fact, I would say that the 2015 live action takes more liberty, just by virtue of there's no music in that one. That, to me, feels more different than this did.
Yeah. But at the same time, this tends to pull at least one thing specifically from 2015, or I suppose 2015 pulled from this. More true to the source material than the animated classic did, but we'll get into that in a moment. Starting with the opening credits, this is where I sat there going, they're in this? Wait, they're in this? They're in this?
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. I forgot how, I mean, Brandy, Whitney Houston, Whoopi Goldberg. You know, those were the three that off the rip I knew. But I admittedly forgot about Jason Alexander. I forgot about Bernadette Peters. Like
Victor Garber.
I forgot how many people were in this.
It's stacked. It's totally stacked. But to that point, I love that they let the opening credits breathe a little bit. So you did get to give everybody their title card, did get to give them their time. But as the audience, you don't even really realize that it's happening because it's playing over this gorgeous set and the medley where you get to hear like a little preview of each of the songs that are coming up.
I love the opening shot. I think it's great. I love the sets. I love the costumes. The way they establish and set everything up is phenomenal. Some of the graphics feel very standard definition 1997. So that I think that makes it feel older than it looks. But I still thought that the open was solid.
Well, you have to remember, this was also made for television, too. Right. It wasn't made for the big screen. But what's impressive about that was that this entire thing was a set build. This was all done within a studio, which does totally make sense for TV. But the way that this opening set looks, I had to look into it because I was like, did this later double for Genovia? Is that where they shot? Because it looks so similar the way that they have everybody, you know, coming around the bend. And I think it's worth noting too up top, because a lot of the reason that these songs play such a big role as far as being baked into the plot, Rob Marshall was the choreographer, and he did not waste 1 square inch of this set as far as filling the frame. This is just such a strong opening number. I love when we meet the Step family, how cartoonish they are off the rip.
Yeah, the Sweetest Sounds is the first song. And I thought, just in general, this was a great intro for this ensemble cast, because it's sort of like the opening to Beauty and the Beast. You're establishing a setting, you're establishing characters, you're establishing persona, attitude, soup to nuts. Where they are as people. Like, I thought that the whole thing was really, really just well done.
Agreed. Interesting fact about the song, though, it is Rodgers and Hammerstein, but it's from a different musical. This is not from Cinderella. It's from No Strings. They just thought it worked as the open, which it absolutely does.
Yeah, but I have a problem with this because they take a couple of songs from other musicals and incorporate them into this. And to me, number one, I don't understand why you would do that. I wouldn't go to Jersey Boys and hear something from Spamalot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. If you're going to do a live action shot for shot of the musical, use the songs from the musical. I understand it's supposed to be Rodgers and Hammerstein, but if you're going to pull from other shows, you may have well as just pulled from the animated classic. I know the animated classic is not billed as Rodgers and Hammerstein, but the fact that Disney is putting it out for Wonderful World, if you're going to steal songs from other shows, steal it from your source material, steal it from your own IP. I just don't understand why they would have done this.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. Why not sprinkle in something that's familiar? But this is billed as Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which there's another version, I believe, from 1965. It's actually on Disney Plus at the time of this recording. Pat Carroll's in it, but that is literally like a camera facing a stage play. So I think this is more meant to be a retelling or an adaptation of that, as opposed to a live action of the animated Cinderella. I think this was supposed to stay in that Rodgers and Hammerstein world, but like of all the songs they could have pulled in, I think that this works so beautifully. And I think it was a really smart choice too, to have Cinderella and the prince meet almost kind of Aladdin and Jasmine-y, because he's sneaking out of the palace. I like that they're already into each other, and it wasn't just because they met at the ball.
And her name as Cinderella
Yes.
carries over into the 2015. They don't address that at all in the animated classic. And in the 2015 version, they make it seem like it's a put down, that the stepsisters and her stepmother gave her that name. In this case, it's almost a term of endearment for her, because she doesn't mind having the cinders touch her, because she likes sitting as close as she can to the fireplace. So instead of it being a put down, it's something that she owns. So I would say this is probably the second strongest, just through introduction, the second strongest Cinderella that we've met so far.
I would agree. And I like this better than having started with a flashback to see her with her father as a child, and then cut to the father passing away, and now she's stuck with the stepfamily. I think that this was a much better introduction. And I agree, because that was something that I was very critical of when we did the animation. They make a point of saying, you know, in the source material, it's always she got the name because she would sleep close to the fire. And in the animated, she's in an attic. And I was like, you completely jumped the shark there. So I like that they really made it a part of her story here. And I think the costume lends really well to that as well.
I would agree. Some costuming that doesn't work. Lionel, that's Jason Alexander's character. They did him dirty with that hairpiece.
How dare you,
awful.
sir?
It's awful. I think the costumes throughout are really, really good. But that hairpiece they put on, that poor man. Why? It just stands out like a sore thumb.
I love everything about this character. Jason Alexander did not have to go so hard, but he did. Jason Alexander in this movie, to me, is the equivalent of when they brought Phil Collins in for Tarzan, and they were like, you know, don't go too crazy. It's an adaptation of Tarzan, the boy that was raised by gorillas, and then Phil Collins just comes in and like lights the piano on fire. Jason Alexander just understood the assignment. In particular, the next song, The Prince is Giving a Ball. It's very fast. I think he nails it. Is he the greatest singer? No. Is he the greatest dancer? No. But he is having so much fun. It is palpable. And it's just his little mannerisms that he gives as he's listing everything out. Or what does he say? To gain some royal pounds, yeah. And he like makes the motion of his stomach getting bigger. Like he just, it's perfection. I love it so much. And I remember that as a kid. I remember just being so entertained buy this number, this is the one that truly hooked me in, and I love it to this day.
See, and I think that his voice is phenomenal because he really belts it. I
At
think
the
a lot
end,
of people,
yeah.
a lot of people remember him as George Costanza. I also remembered him from Dunstan Checks In.
And Hunchback, we have heard him sing.
But this, but this was just over the top in all of the right ways. I thought that it was really well done.
So then we get home.
Yes, I have some thoughts about home.
I love the house. I mean, maybe this is a big change because we know that it's supposed to be set in the countryside, but I absolutely love the set design here. And what I love too is between the house and the costumes, I feel like this could really serve for any Disney movie. Like, I feel like they work in Cinderella. There's certain patterns that look like scales in the costuming. This could also work for Little Mermaid. This could also work for Aladdin with all the textures.
I don't like this house.
Ugh,
I'll tell you why.
it's so fun.
I think that's why I don't like it.
Well, that's right. It's whimsical.
so-
Why would you enjoy it?
It's not that I don't like whimsy. It's that when you compare it to the live action remake as well as the animated classic, everything, like you said, there's scales, there's swirls, there's squiggly lines. It looks like they took the graphics from the graphic card from Rugrats, and if it existed in that, they slapped it on the wall.
Oh, God, that's probably why I love it so much.
The pocket doors, I'm fine with, but like the wavy carve into it. Had they taken this house and put it in Hocus Pocus and took the cottage from Hocus Pocus and put it here, I would have been like, that's a good swap. That makes sense to me. I don't buy how everything is supposed to be so elegant and this is so over the top. Like, I have problems buying that this is like the home that Lady Tremaine has built.
Oh, I don't even care. I love it so much. And it's so intricate. Like, it amazes me how even the walls, all of those squiggles are painted on. And that was for TV where, like, you wouldn't even, back in the day in standard def, you would not even see that level of detail. I love that they went so hard with it. And I think that that also serves the retelling, because if you're listening to the lyrics, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella is a lot heavier than the animation. So I think that they're trying to juxtapose a very tonally serious soundtrack with the lightness and the whimsy that would come with an animation. And that's why they're trying to make it feel a little bit more cartoony so that this isn't such a downer.
You start to see Cinderella interact a lot with her stepmother and stepsisters, but specifically with the stepmother, before she gets into her next song here, you know, as we're kind of getting a tour of the home. And I got to be honest with you, it could be a bit of inexperience. It could be that she was so young at the time. Brandy, in her acting, not in her vocals, because we'll talk about her vocals in a moment here, just in her delivery, she seems really stiff. I don't know if it was that inexperience or if it's because she's playing opposite Bernadette Peters. She's stiff.
Inexperience. Do you know how long she was in the business? She got started very early.
Was she a
This
stage
was not
performer?
her first time at the rodeo.
She was a stage performer?
Do you not remember Moesha?
I remember
That was
it was
on for like 5 years.
I remember it was on UPN, I think.
No, but she had been doing this for a while even before that. I think she got this and Moesha around the same time. And this is where like she really broke out. But no, Brandy was one of the biggest stars both acting wise and singing wise of the 90s. She is 90s royalty. You need to sit down.
Okay.
No, I love her in this. I don't find the performance stiff at all. I think she's so endearing. I think she's timid and it's intentional. She's innocent. I love everything about this, especially when she sings In My Own Little Corner. I love the song. I kind of feel like it's what we never knew we were missing from the animated version. Like, I feel like this and Sing Sweet Nightingale, it's like an even split, but I feel like this delves into the character a little bit more. Because what I love about the animated Cinderella is that, you know, we had talked about this when we reviewed it, is that she gets sort of written off as like a flowery princess, the ones that didn't do much and they waited to be rescued by the prince.
And yeah, that's not her at all.
And no, it wasn't something I realized until much later in life, that it was never about getting the prince. It was just about going to the ball to better her situation, because she is fed up, and she's very sarcastic with her stepsisters throughout the beginning of that film. And, you know, Sing Sweet Nightingale is kind of like where she's drifting off in her own mind, just as a means of an escape. But here, I feel like it shows that she's even more of a dreamer with this song.
I'm glad that you say that, because my note is that she takes isolation and turns it into imagination.
Yes.
So this is like more ownership of her situation, where she owns it, she embraces it, and not in a woe is me sort of way.
No.
So in that respect, Brandy does do a good job bringing this character together as somebody that's, you know, she's got a tougher skin. She's more calloused. And I thought that her vocal range, I mean, listen, I thought her acting was stiff. I thought her acting as Cinderella was better in this last Descendants movie. Yeah, I'm going to say it. But her vocal range, nobody is ever going to say that she can't belt. I mean, this is a great showcase for her in terms of her musical talent. And again, I thought that it worked really well to further develop that character.
And worth noting, they did update a few of the lyrics, because she was the first Black woman to play Cinderella. So instead of, I believe the original lyrics are, I'm a Norwegian princess, and they changed it to Egyptian. So I think they made a couple of smart choices in the updates there. So they're leaving for the ball.
Yeah.
Probably the stepsisters are my favorite part about this. Aside from the incredible talent, I just love these two. They are what I remember most. They're clearly having so much fun bouncing off of each other. So they have this test where Lady Tremaine is, or actually, I don't even know if she goes by Lady Tremaine in this movie now that I'm thinking of it.
I don't think she does.
My note about Bernadette Peters in this movie is that she plays her, the stepmother. Yeah, you know what?
She's just billed as Wicked stepmother.
Yeah, because that's the original source material. Lady Tremaine was totally a Disney thing. But my note about her is that she's like Susan Sarandon's Marmee in Little Women, like her distant wild cousin, trying to marry these two off. You know, she's got the books on their head, and she's drilling them about what they're going to do when they meet the prince. And I love this competition between the two of them of like their feminine wiles, or at least what they think are feminine wiles, and they're trying so hard and failing miserably. And, you know, I'm going to bat my eyelashes. Well, I'm going to bat my eyelashes too. The infectious laughter to this day kills me. She nails it. It's so funny.
Now, as we're getting closer to the ball, you're getting a lot more of Jason Alexander and, you know, Lionel developing a relationship with the prince, which I absolutely love. Their little relationship together, because the king and the queen, you know, Victor Garber and Whoopi Goldberg, specifically the queen, they just want him married off. They want him marrying royalty. She can't accept the fact that he doesn't want to be married. For anything less than love, been there, done that. We've seen this before. Which usually, it's flipped on the other side. It's usually the princess wanting that. So it was interesting to see that in this case, it's the prince, right? But you start to see Lionel and the prince manipulate the situation because they know they have to have this ball anyway. So they're going to make it work in their favor, where the prince is just going to get what he wants out of it anyway. It's a little bit of scheming behind the scenes, but I love how they, at this point, are fleshing out all four of these characters, certainly more so than they ever did in the animated version.
You know, I'm really glad that you bring that up because that was something that I hadn't even realized. The reason that it's usually the princess fighting and saying, I want to marry for love, it's not a trope. It's unfortunately because that's the way that things were. This is about a woman's role in society and never having a voice and never having the freedom to choose until Princess Jasmine. You know, I mean, like Ariel, yes, sure. But Jasmine is really the first one to fight for it and say, I'm going to marry for love and I'm going to choose who I want. In almost every other instance, the woman was just married off. So to hear the prince saying it is nice, but other than the pressure from his parents, it's not real. I mean, like, okay, let's simplify everything. This is a made-for-TV movie, but these are very low stakes. While it's nice that you want to fall in love and get married, it is up to you. The women didn't have that luxury.
Which gets us into falling in love with love. The next musical performance, which is not a song from this musical. It's taken from a different show. My opinion of this will not change. It happens again after this. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it. I feel about this the way I feel when you take based on a true story. If it's endearing enough to do a film about, do a film about that. Not about what you want it to be.
But you know what? I think the song is so perfect because we're getting something here that we don't get in the animation at all. We know in the animation that Lady Tremaine is horrible, that she treats Cinderella very poorly. That's a given. And we know, or we can assume, that she didn't really marry Cinderella's father for love. She just wanted to be taken care of. Here, this song drives that home. She's saying basically that she fell in love with the idea of being in love, doesn't matter who it is, and then doubles down on it by saying that it's foolish to fall in love and risk getting your heart broken. So she is spelling out in front of Cinderella that this was never about her father, which is a pretty terrible thing to be throwing in her face at this juncture.
We then get introduced to the fairy godmother, played by Whitney Houston. Impossible, It's Possible is the next song. It's a great performance, musically, from Whitney Houston. We know Whitney Houston can act. We saw her in The Bodyguard. I don't know if they're trying too hard to make this a stage show that was filmed. But it's stiff. It's stiff and it's flat. But Cinderella, don't you know? I've said this on the show before. Specifically when it comes to stage actors that are put in film roles because they're cheaper to hire. If they don't have a lot of film experience, they act on film like they act on a stage. When you're projecting to an audience of 2,000 people, it's not the same as being shot on film.
Correct.
And I feel like they were trying too hard at times to make this a stage performance that got shot on film. and there's something about this, and there's something about the dialogue between the two of them, Brandy and Whitney Houston. Something is not working here.
How dare you, sir? Okay, I will address the stage performance shot on film thing first. I love that they did that. That's what I meant in the opening number, where I think it works so beautifully because everything gets to breathe. You really get to take in these sets. There's not a lot of edits. They get to sing and emote and perform, and you don't have to worry. Like, I love the fact that the camera is moving with them throughout instead of punching in for close-ups here and there. Like, there's really not a lot of cuts in this film. So I think that works really, really well. As far as this blasphemy that you're spewing about Whitney Houston, and I'm not just saying that because she has since passed and we're trying to be respectful of the dead. She is incredible in this film. I love her take on the fairy godmother. I love the costume. I love the hair. I love the makeup. To me, she is playing this like RuPaul, and I am living for it. That's the quality that she's bringing, and I think it works perfectly. I think every choice was absolute perfection. I haven't even gotten to the fact that Impossible, with these two singing it, has been living rent-free in my head since 1997. This is my Roman Empire, this song. I'm not even kidding. I cannot read the word, I cannot hear the word without thinking of the two of them hitting that note in unison. It's incredible. The only knock about this sequence is the CGI, but it was made for television in 1997. I'm not going to critique it that hard. No, the whole thing, 10 out of 10. This dress, perfection.
The carriage is an incredible set piece.
Oh, God, yeah. I love the carriage.
I think the carriage is better than the carriage that we saw in the live-action remake. You know, if there's one thing I'm going to appreciate about this film, for some of its warts, these are practical sets. They're practical props. They didn't rely on CGI. It's just amazing to me, and I say this every week almost, how much better, even in a lousy movie, I'm not saying that this is lousy, but even in a lousy movie, or even in a cheaper made for TV film, which this had a high production cost for its time, but comparatively to these $100 million movies they're making now, how much better these look. They're never going to go back to it. They should, but they never will. Let's talk about the ball, though. This set, these costumes, top notch.
It's stunning. It's stunning. The blues and purples against that white and gold background, this whole sequence is absolutely gorgeous. The only thing is that I do feel like once Cinderella and the prince meet and then they sort of exit and do their own thing and we're going to catch up with them later, this does start to drag a bit once your leads step out. Like, I get why you continue to let them dance because it is so gorgeous, but without the plot moving through it, it did feel like this was going a little bit long, but you almost don't mind just because it's beautiful. The dancing is also so impressive because you're inserting so much physical comedy, moving the girls in and out. Like, Jason Alexander is probably more choreographed than Brandy and Paolo have to be because he's getting thrown all over the place.
Yeah, that was a note that I had, was that the dancing, and I understand it's Rob Marshall, that dragged on a little bit. It was a little too long. I thought, for the reason you said, you're losing your leads. I don't know why we necessarily needed to linger on that. I think they did it just to show off the choreography, show off the beautiful set, show off the beautiful costumes, the wardrobe. You don't need to because we've already seen it. We've been in this room for 5 or 6 minutes. Getting them outside, we should have just followed with them.
And the song 10 minutes ago, I feel like that sort of drags a little bit.
It's
too.
sort of just fine.
Yeah, sung beautifully.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think because you had the waltz going on and the physical comedy does break that up. I feel like you did need something to like keep it moving here.
Agreed.
A little bit more. You do eventually get it with the Stepsisters Lament.
This song is hysterical. It's probably my favorite song in the film.
Clearly no fun was had while filming this.
It's got the same tempo as the opening number of Mulan. And I didn't realize that until the second viewing.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, you got me all excited.
No,
I was thinking
not
you were
Donny
going to
Osmond.
compare it to a different song. I was like,
No.
Are we changing our tune here?
No, we're not. Yeah, it's so funny. And like you said, so much fun had by all here. And I think you needed to break it up and give it some lightheartedness because you're about to launch back. A lot of ballads in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of ballads.
But speaking of breaking it up, though, while all of this is going on, Bernadette Peters is trying to pull every other woman away from the prince to get her daughters in there. And really, Lionel is the one who's falling on that sword, trying to keep her away from everyone. And then she flirts with him to distract him. I would watch a spin-off of Bernadette Peters and Jason Alexander in these roles. So funny, so great bouncing off of each other.
They're spectacular. Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful is the next song here. It's a great duet. Really, really, really good song. You know, again, the musical performances, they're to me the highlight of this whole thing, other than the sets and the costumes. But Whoopi Goldberg,
Yeah.
she took me by surprise. That woman can sing.
She was in The Color Purple. You realize that, yeah?
You know what? I don't think I've ever seen it. Or if I've seen The Color, there's been so many iterations of it. I don't know that I've seen the version that she was, which I think is the one that everybody talks about.
Yeah.
That's
with
not
Oprah.
Yeah, I've not ever seen that version. I think there's a few of them out there.
This is a great ensemble song, though. However, coming off of 10 minutes ago, again, it feels like, well, you do break it up with Stepsisters Lament, but I do feel like that's a moment where it ramps up and then we kind of deflate a little bit again. This is a little bit slower, but I do love the part where they're out in the courtyard. I love the blocking of this number between Cinderella and the prince, but I feel like I like the lyrics more than I do the melody. It is a little thought-provoking, though, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, like, you know, when you are blinded by being in love, is this person as great as you think they are? Or is that just because you're into them?
Is it love or lust at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
A Lovely Night.
But before we get there, though.
Okay.
It's almost midnight. She's running. Do we ever see the shoe come off?
I don't think
so.
I don't think so. I think there's a few misses here with the shoe.
Yeah.
But let's pin that for a minute.
That's a big miss because that's what they struggled with clearly because they're doing it CGI so that the dress fades away and she's back in her I guess
handmade,
house clothes.
Or what do you call it?
Yeah, her apron.
Yeah.
And she's running down the stairs, but I was surprised that they didn't punch in for a close-up of her feet, especially when you have the practical set that they did, or punch in for the close-up of the shoe.
It's kind of the whole point.
Right. So I was really, really surprised that they didn't make a bigger deal of the shoe.
A Lovely Night. To me, this is just another song that's sort of there. I think it's kind of forgettable, really.
I don't at all. I like that she's singing with the sisters. I also like that there's like a little bit of bonding between them because it kind of makes you think that there could be something there if the sisters weren't so much under the rule of the stepmother. And it kind of makes it seem like she is the one pulling all of the strings as far as how they're treating Cinderella. Because there is a world they're all singing together. It seems like there's a world where they could all get along. But it's also very important to the plot because this is where the stepmother starts piecing it all together, that the girl that looked familiar with the ball could in fact be Cinderella.
Right, because now the prince is doing what we know he's going to do. He's going to go about town. He's got the glass slipper. He's getting people to try it on. There's a lot of really funny physical comedy in this whole bit. I appreciate the fact that they went with a practical piece for the glass slipper, but this glass slipper just looks like acrylic plastic.
It does.
It's not very impressive. It looks like a glass slipper that you would have gotten in a Halloween costume if you were doing Cinderella. If you had gone to like Party City or Spirit and got like the $39 costume, that's what this slipper looks like. It doesn't even look glass. It just looks clear acrylic.
Well, I mean, that's probably budgetary, right? I mean, obviously, I'm not suggesting that you use a real glass one, but for all of the extras that they're trying it on, it doesn't need to fit. So you did need to make sure it's smaller than all of the people that you cast. So you're probably just coming up with something that is a one size fits all or is not going to fit all. If you cast women, let's just for argument's sake, say that it was with a size 6 or 7 foot, that was the casting call, and they made this slipper for a size 5, it's not going to fit everyone. It had to be done intentional. So since it doesn't have to fit, it doesn't really matter what it's made out of. But in 1997, you also wouldn't have noticed that. As long as it was clear, you weren't necessarily going to realize that the material couldn't pass for glass. The only one that had to pass for glass was Cinderella's, which it does, because that's a different shoe, which was obviously custom made for Brandy.
Right. Also, we've completely lost sight of the fact that the slipper is broken.
Yeah.
And Cinderella pulls the other one out.
Right. And I think that has to do with they didn't bother getting the shot on the stairs.
But that's the entire point of the movie. The entire purpose of this is so that she loses the shoe, so he goes on the hunt to find her.
But that could also be that they're sticking closer to the source material. I've never read I've read like a child's version of the Brothers Grimm book. I've never read like the actual Brothers Grimm Cinderella, where it's much darker and Lady Tremaine or the wicked stepmother is cutting off toes so that the sisters will fit into the shoe. So it very well might be that the Disneyfication of this story was losing the shoe and then it breaking. If this was trying to stick closer to the original and that's what happened, that may be why, they danced around it. But just because this was Disney, it's surprising that, to your point earlier, why not pull more from the animation? One of my favorite lines, though, I don't want to skip over it, is the wicked stepmother's desperate attempt to pass off one of her daughters one more time. And she's like, Calliope speaks 3 languages, 4 if you count Pig Latin. I don't know why to this day. I just find it hysterical. But I love it. I love the comedy from the Step family.
So there are a lot of things in this film that perhaps stood out to you. It could be something that called back to your 90s heart. Maybe it's something that reminded you of an earlier stage performance you saw of the Rodgers and Hammerstein show. Maybe it's something that reminded you of something you saw in the Disney animated classic. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek and find card game that you can play in your favorite parks. Whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, or more, Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. So you sort of hit on it before, and so I'll bring it up now. Not a lot of production errors. You don't see the boom mic. You don't see shadows. There's nothing really out of place. It's a fairly flawless production in terms of that. I couldn't find a ton that paid homage to the animated classic. There may be something in there that I missed. But what stood out to me in the ball was, you talked about the blues and purples against the white and gold set design, right? Well, the white and gold, the prince is wearing white and gold. The queen and king are not. They're in the blue and purple.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is in that kind of royal blue and purple. Other than the prince, there are 3 characters that aren't. It's Cinderella in the dress that we know she's going to wear, plus the stepsisters.
Right.
These really cartoonish, over-the-top, lavish, borderline hideous outfits that they're wearing. Again, to make them seem very cartoony. But I thought it was interesting that you could have just as easily put everybody in blue and purple and then just did Cinderella in a lighter shade of blue, that powder blue that we know she's going to wear. I appreciated the fact that they also did the stepsisters differently and put the focus on the 3 of them, not just on one.
I believe those are also the same colors that they used in the animation. So I think that's sort of an homage to Anastasia and Drizella. Because especially there's that bright green, which is unmistakable. I did notice a slight error, but that has more to do with going from standard def to high def. When Cinderella's fairy godmother comes and they step outside right before she transforms the coach and the dress and all of that, there's a shot of Brandy, and behind her it almost looks like I can't tell if it's tile or if like a cargo net is hanging like from the lighting grids or something like that. But there is something visible that is breaking up the backdrop. You would have never, ever noticed it on TV in 1997, but now it's kind of clear as day.
All right, let's talk about our cast here. We've sort of talked a lot about our cast as we've talked about the musical numbers. We talked about Brandy. We talked about Whitney Houston. We've talked about Jason Alexander. We talked about Whoopi Goldberg. And we talked about Bernadette Peters. Let's talk about a few others in the cast that we really haven't touched on yet, starting with Paolo Montalban, who does play Prince Christopher. So he does have a name. He's Prince Christopher in this. He's not just the prince.
And Whoopi Goldberg does say it a couple of times. She calls him Chris a couple times.
He's a scene stealer.
Yeah.
He's outstanding. I thought he had the presence of a royal, but he had this kind of boyish innocence that made him very endearing. And obviously his musical numbers were out of the park. He was phenomenal.
It's a shame they changed the name because he is truly Prince Charming. From the second he comes on screen in the town square, he's just got that $1 million smile, but there's something more than that. It's just something that is exuding out of him. I'm not going to say it's like over the top charisma because he's not trying to project that swagger, but he's just charming. Like there's no other way to put it. And you're right. He's an absolute scene stealer, which is pretty remarkable to do because I believe he has an introducing credit, which means this would be his first film. So the fact that he's able to even hold his own with this incredibly stacked cast is amazing, but he's not getting lost in the shuffle. He is completely standing on his own. He's an incredible singer, and he's just amazing in this role. And I'm so glad that he got to revive it with Brandy.
Victor Garber plays King Maximilian. He and Whoopi Goldberg are phenomenal. I mean, Victor Garber is good in basically everything that he does, and I understand this isn't his film. He's not going to be the lead, but this man could have had more screen time. I just love him in everything that he's in. And that's all I have to say about that.
Same. I've always just been like drawn to him as an actor. Like he's not, like one of my favorites, but every time he pops up and he's been in everything, right? He's just somebody whose presence you're always happy to see. What's really interesting though, is that this was the first thing he did after Titanic. But nobody knew what Titanic was back then. I mean, you knew what Titanic was, but like nobody knew that the movie was coming out.
Right.
So I was reading that the cast was asking him like, oh, what was your last project? And he's like, oh, I had to be like in Mexico and, we were filming a lot in the water in a pool. And like nobody was putting it all together that this was, that's what he was in. So it's so funny that he goes from that to being dropped in a Disney film. But I love him. And I agree with you. I love the two of them together. Him and Whoopi Goldberg just have such a great rapport.
Let's talk about people that have a great rapport. Vianne Cox and Natalie Desselle as Calliope and Minerva.
Calliope?
Calliope. What did I say? Calliope?
Yep.
Calliope. Yeah, sorry. I got nothing. She says the names. I've seen this movie twice in my life, okay? And she says it so fast. You know what it's like? Club Dread. Instead of saying Penelope, he calls her Penelope. That's what this is like for me. They're great. I love them as the stepsisters. They are just hysterical. The physical comedy was there. The over-the-top, just beyond. Like, again, out of the park. They
are just the true definition of comic relief. And what I love the most about it is that you still made them the quote unquote ugly stepsisters because they're ugly on the inside. You didn't have to do a makeup. You didn't have to exaggerate it. Their performance is so over the top on its own. You didn't have to do a thing. You could just let them be. Clearly, they had so much chemistry. They were just absolutely incredible the way that they bounce off of each other. I would have watched a whole movie of just them.
Final thoughts on 1997 Cinderella. I'll go first because this is going to be much quicker than yours, I'm sure. Yeah, it's good. I think the sets, the costumes, the musical performances, to me, that's what makes this. Do I think it's timeless? I actually think it is. Because I wish that they made films like this nowadays, just in terms of the amount of detail that they put into things like sets and costumes. I think the cast is timeless. I think you just name all of the talent in the film. And, I mean, honestly, none of them were products of their time. I mean, yes, Brandy was huge in the 90s, but like she's still popular now. Victor Garber, Whoopi Goldberg, Jason Alexander, Bernadette Peters. I mean, you're talking 50 years that they've had these careers. They were famous and popular before. They're famous and popular afterwards. So to that extent, and the fact that it's Cinderella, yeah, I think the movie is timeless. Is it one I'm going to go back? Oh, Whitney Houston, of course. I'm forgetting Whitney Houston. Is it one I'm going to go back and watch tomorrow? No. Is it one I'm going to go back and watch next year? No. But I do think it's worth a watch, and I will eventually revisit it. Maybe.
I'm going to be much shorter than you. This is the better live action.
I think in some aspects it is. I think Cinderella as a character is better here than in the live action. I think there are just elements of both that when I think that the sets obviously are better in this. But
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love the Have Courage and Be Kind of the 2015, but I think overall when you're talking about adapting the animation to the screen, the choices that they made, what they did with the characters, the comedy in particular, this is the better one.
We are interested in hearing what you have to say about 1997's Cinderella. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first, a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the most magical place on earth. Planning for a Disney vacation can be stressful, but it doesn't need to be when you're working with a KMV Travel specialist who will work with you to customize the perfect vacation for you and your family. Your KMV Travel Advisor will help you determine what parks to visit on each day, ensure you know the ins and outs of essential tools like My Disney Experience and Genie Plus apps, assist with dining reservations, and of course, share their favorite hacks so you get the most out of your vacation. Visit kmvtravel.com to start making magic now.
Hey everyone, this is Brian down here in South Florida. I'm about 2 hours south of Disney, and when it comes to planning vacations, Jackie's the way to go. When it came to booking my family vacation for my 2-year-old daughter and my wife, you know, like everybody, I immediately went to the internet, started scouting prices. Just out of curiosity, I reached out to Jackie. She mentioned she was booking vacations for many people. So I gave her my list, my itinerary. She looked it over, and when she came back to me, she gave me her recommendations in regards to the parks. However, she also had new pricing associated with it. I've learned that going on my own doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be getting the best pricing. On top of that, it was stress-free. So all my vacations in the future are going to be through her because I don't have to think about it. She plans it. I give her some information in regards to what I want to do and create the itinerary for me. She's a market expert. She advised on which rides to attack first, which restaurants I should schedule on what day, and how to properly allocate my time to maximize my vacation. It was an amazing process. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Everybody was so excited to finally see a Lilo and Stitch trailer. Never in my wildest dreams did I say a controversial trailer drop.
Really?
There are so many people hating on this on social media, and it's because social media is a cesspool. I do not like Lilo and Stitch. We've established this. I think this trailer looks great.
Same.
I'm actually really excited for this.
I said the same thing. I was like, are we actually going to be converts now to Lilo? I think this could do it for us.
This could do it.
Because it looks great. And yet it's a shot-for-shot remake of the animated trailer. I've watched a side-by-side. This looks so much fun. Here's something I haven't said about a Disney film in a while. The CGI for Stitch looks incredible. The only knock I have with the trailer, I'm detecting a little bit of AI in the surfing scene. Now, I understand we're not going to put a child on a surfboard in the middle of the ocean. However, there were ways that we could have done this in a pool and nobody would have known the difference. There was a freeze frame of it, and maybe I will give it this. I am not going to make my complete judgment just yet. However, There's a freeze frame of it's like a long lens shot of them surfing. Like I think one of the aliens is like watching through a telescope or something. So they released the still of that, and I zoomed all the way in because I was like, this looks weird. And I zoomed into the hand, and the hand looks weird. So we may have used AI. I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not going to say that it's definite because I could be wrong if they just got like a weird freeze on her. However, I don't want to ruin my excitement for what could be, me actually seeing what everybody else sees in this movie finally. But that's going to put me in a really awkward position because if it's AI, like, I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to go see it in theaters.
Something we did see in theaters that we should have waited until a Disney Plus release.
Speaking of CGI.
Mufasa, The Lion King, coming to Disney Plus on March 26th. If you didn't see it in theaters, I'm glad you saved your $8 because now you can see it on Disney Plus. That's dropping on March 26th. I don't have much to add.
There is something a lot more exciting, though, happening on March 26th.
Oh, yeah.
We got a ton of news this past weekend out of South by Southwest, which I was very surprised at because South by Southwest is more notably a film festival. You've got Sundance in January, and then this is like your next big one before Cannes, Venice, and Tribeca. So this is where the films like really start to get buzzy for the rest of the year. But I was surprised to see how much Disney released about the parks. Coincidence? No. Why? Because there's another park that's got a lot of big news happening. And you wait. This is the tip of the iceberg. You wait until May. This is just the beginning. I can guarantee you of what Disney is going to start to drop, because they're going to want Epic Universe crushed in the Google. And they're coming out swinging here.
So Mando and Grogu are getting added to Smuggler's Run, also starting on March 26th, which makes a lot of sense. I think that that's a smart way of incorporating them into that ride. I think Smuggler's Run now has been around for a few years. It's fun. Once you've done it, you've done it. I think that's why the wait for it. I mean, now it's at times it's a borderline walk-on, even on standby without doing single rider.
We did do single rider, but they let us both on, and we had the entire Falcon to ourselves. We both got to pilot.
So, yeah, which never happens. You're usually a gunner.
I don't want to make this sound like it happened like last week. This was last time we were there.
But that was a couple of months ago.
But it was like off peak.
But my point being that Smuggler's Run at times is starting to almost be Star Tours. But at least with Star Tours, you can get a new story. I think putting Mando and Grogu in here is smart, because what that means is if Skeleton Crew becomes the next big thing, we haven't watched it yet, but everybody talks about how great it is, maybe you can incorporate them. I think being able to experience a different adventure in the Millennium Falcon, I think this is a good stepping stone for what is to come.
I think that was always sort of the bigger picture, and that's why they did it as, essentially sort of another VR ride.
Right.
Because you can always change out the story. And they've also known that they're going to keep exploring the Star Wars universe. So like this is going to become as timeless as Star Wars, and that you can keep changing it out with fresh stories to match what is on Disney Plus.
Yeah, and there was one more movie related thing before we finish talking about parks here, but it goes into Mando and Grogu, because obviously that film is coming out, and they did release some set pictures this week. And what I loved about the set pictures is you're seeing some droids and some other things that could have very easily been CGI, and you'd think that they are. Oh my God, they're practical.
You mean like we were supposed to have in Galaxy's Edge with the drones the first time around?
Correct.
They look pretty cool, though.
Yeah. All right, let's move into parks for the rest of this conversation now. Starting with things that are happening both at Walt Disney World and Disneyland. Let's talk about Disneyland for just a second. There has been a teaser for another attraction going to Avengers Campus. It is going to be a flight simulator that, in the story, has been developed by Tony Stark. If it looks like the Sum of All Thrills, it's because it's more or less the same mechanism.
That's exactly what I was thinking of as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh, Sum of All Thrills, a roller coaster that I would go on. I would design it myself. I would know that all of the flips and stuff were coming, and like, we still made it extreme.
Yeah. I
still have my emails, by the way, from Sum of All Thrills.
Yeah, I still have some of the cards.
And the videos too.
Yeah.
That's what's in the email. I love that they brought out our DJ to announce this. He's clearly jazzed about it. But I think it's a really smart design and smart story. I think it's smart on Disney's part, because with Sum of All Thrills, they've done something like this already. So it's probably something that they can turn around relatively quickly. But I buy it. I'll tell you, I buy this more as an extension of the Avengers, or the extension of Tony's story, more so than I do Princess and the Frog trying to get the recipe.
Yeah. Let's go to Walt Disney World for the rest of this conversation here. Concept video released for what is the loading zone for the Monsters, Inc. single-track indoor coaster. This looks amazing.
This looks intense.
It's a coaster for children. So, I think it's going to be great.
Well, I mean, given what this is replacing, I'm already going to have a whole bunch of margaritas before I even set foot here. So you might have enough to get me on this coaster. No, but it's cool. It's cool to see it start coming to life, because you kind of had a pretty good idea of what it was going to be in the still concept art, but it's cool. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Like, even though it is replacing Muppets, it is just so stinking cool, and it looks just like the movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is Imagineering at its best, right? And then we have videos of Imagineers out on quads, ATVs, out in the dirt mounds that are beyond Big Thunder, mapping out the attractions for Cars Land.
Okay, so you said it before. Social media is is the cesspool. This is getting so much backlash, and I'm kind of bummed about it, because what people don't realize is that, Imagineering research trips are something that was happening since Walt was alive. That was his thing. It's why we have Jungle Cruise today. So the Imagineers have always done this. They took them out to Sedona, and they were on the tracks getting a feel for how the vehicles would move. And people are speaking out on social media about, like, you have so many other rides that use this exact technology. No, we should be appreciative that this was not something that was a victim of a budget cut, sending the Imagineers out to the field to do this type of research, instead of just doing it with AI and computing how would this vehicle move. Or how would it hit this bump? Or what does it feel like in the dirt? No, they actually did it. So quit your belly aching.
Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can help support the show. Please give us a listen and a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.